I'm talking to you today about how to make the most of Magento Events, which is something I have a little bit of experience in. But first off, the first time I came to Austin was actually about 2 years ago. I noticed a few things. One of the first things I noticed was clearly they know how to welcome people in the technical community because their hotel has plenty of outlets and even USB ports at times. But the second thing I noticed was their slogan in the airport and everywhere else, really, which is keep Austin weird. And what an appropriate theme, really, to welcome the Magento community, because let's be honest, we're not the most normal crew ever. That picture's from Imagine, and everyone knows that what happens in Vegas stays online, so sorry, guys. I did have their permission to share that, though. So the Magento community is a quirky group of intelligent innovators who thrive on collaboration. And I know that's kind of a lot of a mouthful to say, but what that really comes down to is we're innovators, and innovators are lifelong learners. And I think it's safe to say that that's why there are Magento events in over 25 countries around the world, which is pretty impressive. Most of that is largely in thanks to our community because we don't have the bandwidth to organize events in 25 countries. So that comes down to how to make the most of Magento events, or really how to make the most of any event, because this advice could really pertain to anything that you attend. I could get into things before the event, such as knowing your goals, so that you can be intentional when you're there, setting up meetings in advance, so that you really know who you're meeting with once you get there. I could also get into things of what to do while you're at the event, such as saying hi to people. I promise we're not super intimidating, at least not all of us. You can say hi to me. And then when you do write follow-up notes, if they hand you a business card, make sure you write down why so that you know what to say when you're following up with them. And of course, you can join in on the hashtag like Mage Titans USA. A lot of this advice has been covered, though. In fact, Karen, who just so nicely adjusted my microphone for me, wrote a great blog post about this on the Shipper HQ blog, specifically for Imagine, but if you go to their blog and look that up, a lot of that will apply to any event. As of June 2016, there have been over 400 talks on Magento this year alone, which is pretty crazy. But what did we learn? How are we better because of these events that we've attended? One of the things that you can do while you're at an event is make sure that you write down key takeaways that you can convert into action steps. So not just necessarily the bullet points of every talk, but really what applies to you and what you can actually take home and make valuable. This is my notebook. It's kind of my lifeline. If I lose it, I might start hyperventilating. But it's also an example of my notes from a conference I went to when we were talking about ROI of community and things of that nature. And I was able to take these notes home later and apply them into something that became more of an evolved dashboard of things that I report on. But knowing is not enough. We really need to apply that knowledge. I'm a big believer that it doesn't really matter what you know if you're not doing anything with that. So make sure that you have a plan to apply what you learned today. Make sure that as you're taking down notes through all of the great talks coming up, you know how you're going to take those home, how you're going to make them work in your next project. When I first took this job, I was really nervous. If you know me, I was looking forward to this job for a long time. And so I read this book the first 90 days. I didn't get all the way through it because I'm horrible at finishing books. But one of the things that I learned in there is to really take some time to learn first, then to look at quick wins, and then to look at things that you can work on down the road. And I think that applies to events as well. Keep in mind when you're listening to speakers throughout the day to look at what you can start applying now, look at what you can apply to your next project, and look at what you can start applying next year. Just to give you an example, when I was going into events last year, I had these questions rolling around in my head. As you can imagine from looking at them, some of them are coming from internal and some of them are coming from external. Questions like, who should we reach out to for fill in the blank? How can solution specialists get involved? Why were they invited? Can we identify top contributors? What is the actual size of our community? By the way, we still don't know that answer. How do I find a local meetup? How do I get involved in the community? What are key topics for the community? Who can speak at my event? Can I sponsor a meetup? The answer is always yes, I can help you with that. And how do I get Magento swag? When I was at the conference that I actually showed you, nope, sorry, not the conference I showed you notes from, a different conference, we were talking about super user programs, which ideally, or in some worlds, including our world, are top contributor programs. And this is where Magento Masters came from. So if you're not familiar with Magento Masters, it's what we do to recognize top contributors in the community. These are the 20 from 2016, and 4 of them are here today, so definitely go say hi. I think we have a panel with them tomorrow. Another thing I learned and took away from a conference I attended, which was the one that I did show from my notebook, was how to really address how can we better support meetup organizers. So I had an idea that I took from that conference, and then I reached out to meetup organizers and asked them, how can we help? And it turns out that getting to that conference and meeting the Meetup Pro team was actually a solution to our problem. So through that, we were able to create a group for meetup organizers. We were able to create a landing page to help get the word out about their meetups around the world. And we were able to put together a kit with advice from others who have organized meetups before to help those who are just getting started. I do want to make a disclaimer because I used to work for a Magento merchant, a company that owned a Magento merchant actually, and every time she went to a conference we would brace ourselves because she would come back with the best thing ever, every time. So before you apply what you learn, don't forget to think through what you bring back. Make sure it's relevant to you and your team, make sure it's realistic, and make sure you really refined it so that you're not just word vomiting on people with things you haven't really thought through. There's a lot more in detail about working through that process from John, who I have listed up here. He has a great blog post. I can link it out for you later. And then obviously make sure that you're sharing with your team, whether that's email, text, Slack, Confluence, presentation. Like, don't keep your knowledge to yourself from today. Make sure that you're sharing it. Make sure that you're continuing discussions with people who are here later so you can keep working through those concepts. This is an example from Ben and I attending events of things that we bring back to our team. So because we attend so many events, we often see things that are helpful for our events team that aren't even necessarily relevant to what we do, but we're there. So on the left, you'll see my text conversation with Bess about some cool project I saw that everyone got involved with at a conference this summer that I thought would be neat for Imagine. On the right, you see notes from Ben from another event for Brittany, or you overheard something about a hosting change that Travis would benefit for. So make sure that when you hear those things, you think of someone else in your company or bringing that back too. And I think I kind of already said this, but again, just make sure you keep the conversations going, whether that's with your team, whether that's attending local meetups. I know Shipper HQ helps organize with Praxis, one here in Austin, there's one down in Houston. There's meetups all over the world, so definitely keep those conversations going. So the why behind all of this, why does it matter that you actually learn? Well, it matters because when you have to send an email like this or something similar to your boss to get approval to come to the next event, they already know that you're finding value in events because of what you've demonstrated from previous events, so it's much easier to get permission to come. This is an example that I would encourage you to find some way to fill out while you're here this week. Just look at something and say, I learned this from this person and we'll apply it by whatever. For example, you learned how to make the most of events from me, and we'll apply it by finding at least one thing besides this from this week's Mage Titans speakers that you can apply to improve your work. We do this too, so anyone you see here in a Magento t-shirt or who's here from Magento, please find us, please give us your feedback, let us know how to help make Magento better, because we really do want to know. Thanks.